Tonight's tale is called The Car That Stays. It Smells Like Secrets. Listen carefully, because once you hear it, you'll never forget it. Chapter 1. First Day the Car Stood. I was still half dreaming when I walked out of the estate sale with that old Mustang under my arm. The clerk was a sleepy guy in a faded shirt, but he handed me the key with a nervous smile that made the cheap brass feel suddenly important. I imagined pulling up to the highway, the wind in my hair, and this car finally moving for the first time in years. When I hauled it into my driveway, the whole place was quiet, just the night air and the faint hum of the streetlights. I popped the hood, tossed the key into the ignition, and tried to start it like I'd done countless times before. The engine light blinked, the dash lit up, and the key turned, but nothing happened. I cranked again, more forceful this time, and the car stayed stubbornly still. I checked the battery, the fuses, the alternator, all the usual spots. The dashboard was all green. There was no spark, no click, just the same idle light that should have gone off once the engine roared to life. I sat on the passenger seat, feeling ridiculous. The car's interior smelled like old cardboard and a faint trace of something sweet. Maybe the old owner had smoked there. My eyes caught a folded piece of paper tucked underneath the seat. I unfolded it and read a single line in shaky handwriting. "Don't leave me alone." The rest of the note was just a few smudged letters that I couldn't make out. I felt a sudden chill run down my back. I didn't think it was that bad until I heard something. From the hood came a faint, rhythmic whir like a slow heartbeat. It was so subtle I could have blamed it on the engine's cooling fans, but the sound didn't fit. It was steady, pulsing almost like someone counting breaths. I froze, listening. The whir persisted as I backed the car out into the driveway, then faded as I turned the key again. The car remained still, but the sound seemed to grow louder the closer I got to the back of the vehicle. I pulled out my phone and texted Maya, the one friend who could at least make me laugh about stupid car problems. "Hey, I just bought an old Mustang," I typed, hoping to sound casual. "It won't start. Battery's fine. Anyone have a trick?" Within seconds, she responded, "Probably just a bad starter, dude. Get it checked out tomorrow." "No." Her tone was breezy, almost relieved that I wasn't actually in danger. I stared at the note again, its words still there as if written in the dark. The whir in the hood made my skin crawl. The car that was supposed to be a ticket to freedom felt more like a living thing that had taken over my driveway and was waiting for me to keep it still. I left the keys in the ignition, pressed the brake firmly, and walked away, the night air cold against my skin. The house was silent, but something deeper than silence lay under that old Mustang, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was listening. Chapter 2. I ignored the rotten smell. I left the Mustang in my driveway last night, thinking a fresh breeze would clear whatever weirdness I'd noticed. I was hoping the old car's interior, already smelling faintly like something that's been left to rot, would just go away. I was wrong. Morning light was a blur. I walked to the front of the car and took a deep breath. The smell was stronger, like rotten apples, a sharp, sour sweetness that filled the whole cabin. I laughed to myself. Maybe I should have thrown out the old garbage. I typed into my phone before I even pulled the hood open. I had to see if it was just something stuck in the vents. I leaned in close to the fuel cap. The seal was worn, a little crack in the plastic, but that was expected for a 1970s Mustang. Still, I felt a chill when my fingertips brushed a small patch of dark, damp mold where the cat met the wheel. I didn't even think about how it looked until I saw the blackish spots spreading like a thin film. It was almost too quiet, like the car was breathing through the rusted metal. I popped the hood. The engine bay smelled like oil and something sweet. The oil filter was discolored, a pale, almost orange tinge that hadn't been there when I first took the car home. I turned the key once more, expecting the same stubborn refusal, but this time a faint tick, a steady pulse, came from the engine compartment. It wasn't a vibration, it was a sound, almost like the car was counting. I didn't want to believe it, so I called Maya. "Hey, you ever get a car that just refuses to start?" I sent her the photo of the car with the mold patch. Her reply came back in a few minutes. "Only on the back of a bad espresso shot, sorry." She tried to make light of it, but I could tell she was a little off, a small smile she didn't make. "Did anyone else have that weird smell?" she asked. I told her it was probably just a mold thing. I was about to close the hood when something caught my eye. In the glove compartment, beneath a layer of old receipts, was a folded piece of paper. It was different from the first note. The handwriting was more hurried, almost frantic. The words were simple. "It's only getting warmer." I almost laughed, then froze. Warm? I didn't feel anything warm in the car, just the smell, the tick, the mold. I took the note, folded it, and tucked it in the back seat. I sat down on the passenger seat and stared at the dashboard, where the idle light was still glowing. The engine was still silent, but the tick was louder now, a steady rhythm that seemed to sync with my heartbeat. The smell had gone from a sour sweetness to a more acidic tang, and my phone buzzed with a notification from Maya. "Just a heads up, I smelled something weird at my friend's place." Weird vibe. Maybe just a gas leak or something? I didn't tell her it was a car. I didn't want to think about the car taking more than a smell. I imagined the car's presence becoming more intentional, more aware. I kept my phone on silent, my phone at the back of the car, and I sat there, hearing the tick, feeling a slight warmth in the air that wasn't there before. I could feel my own breathing match the rhythm. I didn't know how long I stayed, but when I finally got up, the tick had stopped. I pulled the car into the driveway, left it where it was, and closed the door behind me. The next time I open the door, will it still be warm? Will the tick return? I don't know. All I know is that something in this car isn't going to let me forget about it. Chapter 3, Neighbors Talk About an Abandoned Mystery. I was heading to the mailbox to grab my mail when I heard it. Mrs. Patel and Tom standing in the alley, voices low and frantic. I almost missed it because the air smelled like wet concrete and something sweet, like that rotting apple smell that has been creeping into my car's cabin. "Did you see that?" Mrs. Patel was saying, pointing to the corner where the abandoned lot used to be. "They say the car never moved again after that disaster." Tom rolled his eyes. "Yeah, whatever that was. The city closed the lot a long time ago. No one cares." I walked over, pretending I was only there for a quick pickup. I didn't want to be part of whatever gossiped that night. But the corner was still there. Gray bricks, a rusted sign, and a symbol etched into the curb. It looked like a twisted gear, a shape I had seen on my Mustang's dash in the mirror. The mark was faint, almost like someone had carved it with a pocket knife in a hurry. I could almost feel my heart pick up a beat. "Look, you're seeing things," Tom said. "Just old graffiti." Mrs. Patel was frowning. Then she squinted at the symbol. "That's not just graffiti. That's a pattern the town used to use in some old safety signs." She tapped it with a fingernail, the sound echoing off the concrete. A warning that we were supposed to stay away from that spot. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Mrs. Patel asking if I had seen my Mustang. I opened it to find an attached photo, a handwritten note from the community board, the same style as the one I'd found in the glove compartment of my car. It read in uneven script, "Never leave. The road remembers." The photo was blurry, the edges of the paper showing faint tears. I was in the hallway of the community center, scrolling through a stack of old newspapers. The headline caught my eye: 1970s Cart Incident Leaves Mystery in Eastwood. The article described a single incident on the same intersection that my car now sits on. It didn't say what happened, only that a vehicle had been abandoned in a ditch and never left. The line under it said, "Residents still feel the presence in the air." I didn't have time to read the whole thing, but the words stuck in my mind. When I left the community center, my Mustang was still there, engine still refusing to move, its idle light still glowing. The smell had changed from sweet to almost metallic. I could hear a faint ticking from the engine compartment that sounded like a pulse. I glanced at the symbol on the curb again, its outline now clearer in the night. The air felt thicker, as if something had taken up space in my car. I texted Maya, asking if she had any idea about a cursed car or an abandoned vehicle. She replied with a shrug and a joke about old cars having a mind of their own. I couldn't help but wonder if the car had taken on the memories of the street. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mrs. Patel, just a photo of the same handwritten note on the community board, this time taken at night with a low light. The note looked like it had been written yesterday. "I'm not going to drive that car until I figure out why it's refusing to start. I'm not sure if it's just a stubborn engine or something else." I keep hearing that ticking, and every time I look at the symbol on the curb, it feels like the car and the street are connected by something old, something still waiting. I don't know what to do, but I know I can't ignore it anymore. If anyone out there has a story about a car that stays put, send it my way. Chapter 4: A Flicker Through the Trunk. I've been avoiding the Mustang all day. It's been sitting on the curb like a stubborn statue, its windows glassy and its engine dead. I finally decided to check it out, because if I'm going to keep living in that fear, I need to see what's really going on. I walked up to the car and tried the trunk latch. It was a little sticky, the usual thing with old cars, but something caught me. The lock made a sharp click, and then, as if on its own, the trunk opened a fraction more than a few inches. The metal of the trunk door was cold against my palm. I squinted inside, half expecting a spare battery, a jack, maybe a rolled-up seat cover. Instead, a sudden flickering blue light burst through the gap and made the whole interior glow like a tiny lantern. The light was so brief it was hard to focus on, but when I looked again, it was gone. It felt like the car had its own heart rate, a pulse that was trying to show itself. I turned my head and caught a faint, almost imperceptible image on the inner door. The symbol was a twisted gear, the same shape I'd seen carved in the curb years ago. It looked like a faint stain, a ghost of ink on wood. I rubbed my thumb over it, and the texture felt a little rougher than the rest of the door, like a scratch. When I shoved my hand further, I felt something solid. I pulled out a small, oddly shaped metal object, a key, but not the usual car key. It was antique, the kind that had a ridged edge and a weight that surprised you. On the back, it had a faint engraving that matched the gear I'd just seen on the trunk, the same jagged shape that appeared in Mrs. Drejour's. Patel's handwritten note. I stared at it for a moment, feeling the cold metal against my fingers, as if it had been waiting for me. While I was looking at the key, the trunk latch creaked. A low, rhythmic ticking started in the back of my head, matching the pulse I'd heard in the trunk before. It wasn't the engine ticking. I knew the engine was still dead, but the sound came from somewhere inside the trunk. It was almost a second of silence, then the ticking started again, steady and insistently close. Tom came out of the alley with his groceries, muttering about the Mustang again. "You gonna do anything with that thing?" he asked, waving a grocery bag. "I keep hearing that it's still stuck. Maybe it's just a rusted lock or something." I told him I didn't have time for that and decided to leave the car for the day. I drove a friend's Honda out of the driveway, hoping the Mustang would stay there while I got somewhere else to sleep. But as soon as I stepped out of the Mustang, something caught my eye again. A sudden, sharp flicker of light passed through the trunk and made a silhouette flick in front of the rear window, just for a second. I froze, heart racing. It was like the car was watching me, as if it had eyes inside its own trunk. I'm not going to pretend I'm not freaked out. I pulled that antique key out of the trunk, put it in my pocket, and walked back to the car. The key feels heavier than it looks, and the ticking echo still lingers in the air. I don't know what that old key means, or what that gear symbol really represents, but every time I look at the Mustang, it's like I'm peering into a secret that the town has tried to keep buried for decades. I left the car with a feeling that maybe, just maybe, I was the one that needs to bring the truth out. If anyone knows how to deal with an old car that doesn't want to start, let me know. This is getting too much. Chapter 5. The door squeaks in response. I was in Mia's Honda the whole drive home, scrolling through a playlist that didn't match the mood in my head. The Mustang sat stubbornly on the curb like a broken toy. I kept thinking I'd just toss it back there and forget it, but the pull was too strong. When I pulled up to the curb, I could almost feel the engine waiting, the air around it thicker than usual. I walked over, the city's late-night hum, a thin background noise. The Mustang's driver's side door was the first thing I tried to open. I slid my hand along the edge, expecting that familiar click, but instead it let out a sharp squeak that echoed a little too loud for an old car. I pushed the door open anyway, only for it to slam shut on its own, the latch clunking like a small warning. The trunk was even stranger. The door rattled like it was being pushed by something it didn't want to let in. Then it locked by itself, the same low, rhythmic ticking I'd heard from inside the trunk earlier that evening. I remember how the key I'd found, an old key with a gear engraving, had slid into the latch, a brief flash of blue light shooting out before the trunk door closed. I took the key out of my pocket and inserted it into the latch again, feeling it slide in with a click that wasn't there before. The blue glow flickered again, but this time it was steadier, almost like a pulse. Inside the car, the ticking from the trunk seemed to come alive. It was a faint pattern, almost a hum that matched the gear symbol etched inside the trunk door. The sound grew louder as I leaned closer, like something inside the car was echoing me. Mia was still in the back seat when Tom, who had been delivering groceries, walked past. "What's up with that Mustang?" he muttered, tapping at his phone. I glanced at the car and felt the side door vibrate in response to his footstep. It was like the car was hearing him and replying, a small squeak that wasn't there before, a kind of listening. I was standing there for what felt like a decade when the trunk door rattled again, this time with a quick flicker of blue light. I felt the key in my pocket press against the door like a pressure point. I didn't know what to do, so I pressed the key against the trunk latch. It slid in, the gear engraving clicking as if it was unlocking something. The blue glow spread like a halo inside the trunk. I could feel the low, rhythmic ticking, steady and almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat that belonged to the car. I thought maybe I'd just drive Mia's car for a while, leave the Mustang and let it be. Instead, it felt like the Mustang was pulling me closer to whatever was hidden. I'm not going to lie, I'm freaked out. I left the key in my pocket because there was no other choice. Every time I see that Mustang's door, I hear a squeak, a warning. I keep feeling that the car is listening, that it's reacting to every footstep, every glance. If someone knows how to handle an old car that won't stay still, let me know. I'm getting too much of a feeling that maybe this isn't just a stubborn vehicle, it's a secret that's waiting to be pulled out. If I keep walking back and forth, maybe it'll come to me. If I keep pulling it, maybe it'll come back into my life, but I don't know if that's what I want. This has turned into something I can't ignore. Chapter 6. It Replies with a Whisper. I kept the Mustang on the curb, the blue glow from the trunk dimming to a faint pulsing. It wasn't that I was trying to get it to move again. I was just curious enough to sit in it again, hoping the weird things would finally make sense. Mia had left me her Honda, so I took a seat on the passenger side, key in my pocket, the little ticking from the trunk like a metronome that I couldn't ignore. The lights inside the car flicked down by themselves when I opened the passenger side door. The Mustang's interior lights were a little too dark, and the ticking from the trunk slowed, almost like it was holding its breath. I turned my head toward the trunk, because that's where the blue glow had come from. That's when it started. Not a bang or a hiss, but a whisper that sounded like it was coming from inside the trunk. I tried to think of it as wind or something in the car's vents, but the sound was so soft that I had to lean in. The whisper barely cut through the silence of the night. It sounded like, "Elena, do you remember?" My heart thumped so hard I could feel it through my palm. I was supposed to be able to tell myself it was just a trick of the light, a reflection of the city's street lamps. Instead, it was the name. Something I'd never heard in this town before, and a question that felt like a confession. I swallowed, almost laughed nervously, then whispered back, "Who is that?" The car's interior lights seemed to pulse faster, a soft blue flare going brighter for a second, then settling. The ticking slowed again, almost to a hush. I felt a pressure against my chest, a sort of weight in the air. Tom was walking past again, delivering groceries, a quick scuffle on his feet, the car's side door vibrating in response to his footsteps. The whisper shifted, now a sharper, urgent breath. "I've been waiting." I almost thought I was hearing his own voice in that, but the words sounded more like a warning, a plea. Mia's Honda was still there, parked across the street, but I didn't notice it. My focus was all on that blue glow and the way the key in my pocket seemed to draw something out of the trunk. The engraved gear on the key felt like a symbol, the same gear that was carved on the trunk's latch. The twisted gear symbol on the inside of the trunk door was still there, a reminder that whatever this thing was, it had a pattern, a language. When Tom walked by again, the whisper didn't fade. It became almost audible. "Do you remember Elena?" I wasn't sure if it was Elena, the name of a person, a past owner, or someone who had lived in that compartment. I felt like the car was asking me to remember something I shouldn't. The blue glow shot up again, brighter, then dimmed, and the ticking slowed so much it almost stopped. I've tried to ignore it, tried to say that I'm just being paranoid, but the Mustang is not an ordinary stubborn vehicle. Every time I approach it, the doors squeak and the trunk's light dim. The whisper always changes when someone comes near. I'm holding this key and the blue glow in my pocket for now, because if I pull it out, I could be pulling more out. The next time I sit in that Mustang, I hope I can figure out who Elena is and what the car wants to protect. For now, I'm not sure whether it's trying to warn me or whether it's already warning me. If this was supposed to stay on the curb, it's already decided to make me stay close, even if it feels like I'm being pulled toward a deeper, darker secret. I keep hearing the whisper every night in my head, and I don't know if I want to stop listening. If anyone has dealt with a car that knows more than it's supposed to, tell me. I'm getting too much of a feeling that I'm already a part of whatever's inside, and I can't escape it now.